we look at the learning targets. The first one is distinguish between instinct or innate behavior and learned behavior. So when y'all think of instincts and innate behaviors, those are all behavioral adaptations. So you're born knowing what to do. So did anybody teach the paramecium and the amoeba and the euglena how to move? No. I mean, they don't have a brain. They have to be able to move. They were born with structures, physical adaptations to help them move. But as far as getting them to move, they have to use ATP. They don't have a network of these nerve tissue and all that. So they have to be able to just use the energy that they make or convert their food into in order to move these things. So in your first 3 blanks on your paper, you should have cilia. Okay, so paramecium is an example. So cilia, and with the little short hairs. And then you should have an amoeba, which looks like the blob, but it's still just like all 3 of them. They're all eukaryotic. They all have a nucleus. They all have these organelles. But each of those is a pseudopod. Okay. And then the euglena here has a flagellum. So that was actually one of the questions that was on that quiz. So they're all unicellular, eukaryotic, and they have some different organelles to do different jobs. So that goes back to all those adaptations. There's also an organelle. You don't see it here, but you remember that star-looking organelle right there? Do y'all remember what that was? Or you remember what it does for it? If all these live in a pond, and naturally water is flowing into them by osmosis.
A lot of water out.
Yeah, it's a contractile vacuole. So it's the water pump is going to pump the excess water out. Otherwise, it's going to pop. The cell membrane is going to rupture. So that just reviews those things. Y'all remember those? Okay, so that's the first part. All right, the next one, phototaxis. All right, so phototaxis. If we look at that, what does photo mean?
Like a picture?
I'll come back to that. But what is photosynthesis? Or what do you have to have, we said, in order to take pictures?
Light.
Light. So photo is always going to mean light. Okay. And then taxis, it looks like taxis, like phototaxis. But our example is a euglena using its eye spot. It has a different organelle that uses to detect light. But taxis, in terms of movement, is actually orienting towards or away from a stimulus, an environmental stimulus. Okay, so if we're going towards something, it's going to be one type, and if we're going away from something, it's going to be one type. So if we say you're moving towards the light, do you think that would be considered positive or negative?
Positive.
It is. So if you go towards something, it's called positive. So it would be positive phototaxis if you're swimming towards the light. So towards is positive, and away from is negative. So let's say that an earthworm wants to burrow down deeper into the soil, and they don't want to be flushed up by the rain, because what's going to happen if an earthworm is going to land on the sidewalk? Y'all see them. They look like little shriveled up little S's, you know, these little dried up worms on the sidewalk, because they get washed up on the shore, because it's kind of like being washed up on a beach, but on a sidewalk, then it's going to die. So earthworms don't have eyeballs, but they have these little cells that's similar to the big one eye spot that the euglena has, and it's able to detect light. So it would be like you closing your eyes and you know that the light's shining on your eyelids. You can't see objects. So they know which way to go. So if earthworm moves away from the light, negative. if a euglena swims towards the light, then it's positive. Okay, but if I tell you that a euglena has chloroplast, why would it make sense that it wants to swim towards the light? To make food. Yeah. What's cool about the euglena is if there's no light, it can eat too. So it's kind of one of those weird protists. So if we go back, tropisms is actually plant taxis. Okay, we just usually, if we're talking about phototaxis, we usually use a different word for plants, and that's called a tropism. So if it's phototropism, what's the plant doing? What's it growing toward?
The light.
The light. Why does the plant want to grow towards the light? Yeah. So think about it. If you see a plant that's like in a windowsill, usually it's just trying its best to get as much light as it can. So its stem or its shoot is moving towards, and that means its leaves are getting more exposure to the light. So for these next ones, we have phototropism. So light. All right. So this is usually the stem and the leaves moving towards the light, and we'll draw a picture. Did anybody get to this far? Okay, so we'll draw it. I've got those. Gravitropism or geo is like Earth, and gravity from the Earth. So what part of the plant do you think is growing down towards gravity?
The roots.
The roots, right. So if this is stem with the leaves, these are the roots, and that's what our picture will show. All right. Figmo, you're going to see a diagram. I want you to tell me what you see. And then hydro, what does hydro mean?
Water.
Water. So again, where's the water going to be for a plant? Right, it's going to move up towards the roots. So this is again going to be the roots growing down towards water. Okay, so let me, here you can see it. This is a little video that actually shows the little euglenas moving towards the light. Start. Okay, so here's one plant. You can draw your own. Oh, go back. Go back. For phototropism, oops. All right, so here's one picture. You could also just draw a little light and have a pot and have the plant growing towards the light. Okay, so however it's easiest for you to draw a picture, the plant growing towards the light. Now this plant fell over in a pot. So you have two things going on. If the light's up here, you see this growing up towards the light. But if we're talking about gravity, it's actually growing against gravity. So both of these pictures are showing, this is going to let me draw, changing it. No, it's not. I don't want. So here are corn seeds that have gotten wet, and they've actually put them up like this. And you can see how the first thing to emerge actually from a seed will be the roots when it germinates. When you plant any seeds, it has to get watered first. So the root's going to pop out first, and then the shoot can come out. So for geo, just draw a plant with the roots going down like that. And then these two are thigmo. This is poison ivy. And then this is English ivy that you guys can see, it's all over. We've got some on our campus growing up against this one, geo, so the roots growing down towards gravity. Sure, 1 second.
You said for stigma, how you say it's like personality.
Let's see if this will let me draw. I'll draw it one more time. So what's happening with the poison ivy growing up on the tree, and then you have the ivy on the wall? If that's stigma, what do they both have in common?
They go straight up. They're actually both following something like on tree or the wall. Like following something.
Yeah, they're called a climber, kind of a climber plant. So yeah, they're going up against something. So that's stigma. Still not letting me do it. I don't understand. Well, so the easiest thing for that one is showing a climbing plant, like a plant climbing up a wall, or the poison ivy climbing around a tree. And don't worry about a picture for hydra. That's the roots again, growing to get water. But okay. All right, we good so far? All right. We'll come back to that. So we've got protist, we've got phototaxis, talking about a protist again moving towards the light, gives energy. And then we have the different plant types. So if we go down to behavior, we want to distinguish between innate versus learned behavior. So if something is innate, what's the difference? What is that? Innate or instinct?
They born how to do it. They don't think about it.
Yeah, you're born knowing it. Born knowing how or what to do. It's genetic, or it's inherited. So if you're born knowing it, you've got a gene for it. If you don't have it, you won't learn it. Plain and simple. So we've been talking about that over the course, for the last week and a half or so, I guess. And some of these we already know about. And so if you talked about courtship with your animal, you told us what was it born knowing what to do, how to attract a mate. So we know attract a mate, and there's different ways. We saw some pretty elaborate things as far as how birds go about all that. Okay, and then communication. So we know there's different ways that animals communicate with each other. If you're a firefly, you may blink your light a certain way to talk to each other. You may blink it to attract a mate. They know the patterns. They're just born knowing it. Other communications are nonverbal too. So think about the body language of different animals, how you know they're afraid, or if they are happy, or they want to get your attention, or if they're aggressive. They have all these different ways. And then we talked about pheromones a little bit. What's a pheromone? The animal releases a pheromone.
Like a certain smell.
Yeah. So this is some type of scent used to communicate. So it might be for ants. For ants, it's used to tell where food is. That's why ants march perfectly in a line. One of them goes out and stumbles upon some food that's out there, and then it goes back, it leaves a chemical trail, so that way everybody else knows where to go. Bees release a queen factor that helps the bees, either it keeps the females from developing into a queen. I guess in a way a skunk, that would be, it's kind of like a warning smell to say back off. Or a lot of them could be sexual attractants, which is part of this whole courtship business. You know, a scent that says, hey, I'm ready, or I'm here. So either way, those are all pheromones. This one's kind of neat. Bees dance, and it's not for courtship. Actually will dance to tell where food's located. So they actually do a round dance and a waggle dance. And in college, that was one of the labs we had to do. We had to figure out and interpret the dances of the bees. And we had to go find the food source.
What do you, it's like, what do they eat?
Nectar. Or like pollen.
Is that like all they eat?
For them, for these, yes. That's nice. Okay? And I'll show you a little diagram of that. All right, what is migration?
Like the things that fly west when it's like cold.
Okay, so it is. So it's a seasonal movement. To avoid usually colder weather they can't live in. They can't hibernate. So in order for them to move, usually there's a stimulus that says, oh, the days are getting shorter. It's getting a little colder. It's time for us to get out of Dodge. Now, sometimes with these mild, winters that we have, birds get confused. They may not really know it's time to go. But we have butterflies migrate, birds migrate, whales migrate, caribou, that reindeer migrate. There's lots of different species that will migrate and have those seasonal rhythms. But if they don't have the gene, they will not go. Will not. They'll just end up being left behind. They won't even know to follow the group, which is pretty crazy to even think about. So, all right. What is territoriality? If an animal is territorial,
that's just their time what you like their spot and like their only spot.
So they defend and mark and defend an area. What are you going to do in that area, most likely? Why would you want to defend that area as yours?
Because that's where you sleep or like get your food and stuff.
All right, so you sleep there, you get your food there. What else could you do there?
Have your babies there.
Raise your babies. So this is defending an area. Defending an area, and you also mark it or claim it as yours. And food, sleep, raise babies, and giving us space to write. But yeah, for that area, you do all that there. And a lot of times you can be aggressive and you can challenge someone for that territory. In the Galapagos Islands, the marine iguanas, they challenge each other for the highest point on the rocks. The dominant ones are usually the ones that are going to get the best spots. So that leads us into a dominance hierarchy. So if you have a dominance hierarchy, what does it mean to be like the dominant one in a group? If you're the alpha.
Most people, all of them have to listen to you. Whatever.
Have what?
They gotta listen to you.
Why do they have to listen to you?
Because you're like dominant. You actually like try to take care of them and stuff. But that's how they take care of you.
So how do you think they figure out who is the dominant one? Caleb, what do you think? There's a challenge and one wins over the other one. Yeah. In geese, that's true. You can replace somebody, but you also inherit the level of your parents. So those geese are automatically that are hatched on this level are going to be on this level unless you challenge and move up. So it's a lot like y'all learned in history. The royals are like here, and then you have the caste system. So you've got this pecking order, it's called. So I skipped torpor, I'll come back to that, but I want to add that, what's it called? Dominance hierarchy, or just dominance. So it's called a pecking order. And the theory is, if you've got this, then you have less fighting in a group. If everybody knows kind of their position or their place or their job, then there'll be less fighting within the group, and you're more productive as a group. So, you can challenge to be able to earn that top spot. Now, usually, if you're the dominant or the alpha and you've got the best territory, you may be the only one who's mating with anybody. You may not get a chance. So that's how they inherit all this stuff. And then torpor, you're going to see a little video clip of this. This is actually two things. This is a deep sleep. So if you don't migrate and you can't handle the cold or the heat. So there's two kinds. There's hibernation for the cold. And it's estuvation. I'll make that bigger because this is like really scrunched up. When it's hot. So if it's really hot, if there's a drought, then you may have to be able to move or to burrow down. You're going to see this little frog that does this. It burrows down into the mud in order to be able to survive a drought, because they need water. But there are actually frogs that live in areas that have a lot of that are real arid. They need water to reproduce. So you're going to see this cool little water-holding frog that does that. So hibernation, estuvation, be able to survive some extreme temperatures. And then the last one we have here is circadian rhythm. Everybody in here has a circadian rhythm. And this is your 24-hour wake, sleep cycle. This is when you get hungry during the day. It's when you wake up. It's when you go to bed. It's kind of like it's like how you get jet lag if you move from one time zone to the other. So what happens in the summertime and then when you start school? What's the struggle with your sleep and your wake cycle? Does everybody get up at the same time in the summer? If you have a job, maybe, but. So if you stay up really late over the weekend and you don't get as good sleep, and then you have to get right back up on a Monday, that's when we can struggle, because our body has a clock. And that clock is saying, whoa, wait a second, something's not right. We're not on the same time. But there's a gland in our brain that actually releases a hormone that helps us get sleepy. And then it stops making that when we wake up. So it's pretty cool, actually, but you set that clock. So it's like a baby. Have you ever been around babies who sleep during the day and they are up at night? Mm-hmm. Or you've heard of setting a baby cycle. So when little babies are born, you have to set that cycle. It's such a struggle trying to get them to sleep through the night. Well, you have to set that for them. So if your baby is sleeping a lot during the daytime, you get that baby up. Try to keep them up a little bit longer. And then that way they're a little bit more tired. They might be fussy, but you try to get them set. So you have to shift that cycle. Now, what if you work first shift and then you go on third shift? What if you work third shift?
My sister said that she worked third shift and then she worked first.
So what's that like?
And so she was very, 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 very tired.
Because your days are your nights. So you have to totally flip-flop how your body's circadian rhythm is. So, but anyway, we set the circadian rhythm of our dog. Our dog goes to sleep when the twins go to sleep. That dog gets as antsy. It keeps coming to us. Like, as soon as we say it's time to go to bed, he runs up the steps and he gets underneath their bed. He is waiting for us to go to bed or for them to go to bed. And it's so funny because on the weekends, he didn't know what to think. It's like he's getting kind of antsy. He's ready to go to bed. So you can set your animal cycles like that too. So, So anyway, all right. So those are some of the different innate behaviors, not learned, that we have. All right, let's see. It's getting ready to rain. Let me show you this. This is great. This little frog. Yeah, y'all can. So what you're going to try to do on the back of the sheet, this is the homework. Some of these we didn't talk about yet. The learning, which is okay, but do any of these that deal with what you just heard or what we just went over. And so that's the last little thing. Okay, so here is a water holding frog.
We're here in a region of northern Australia that gets less than 12 inches of rain a year. We're here so you can compare your resourcefulness to that of a water-holding frog. Is your will to survive as strong as this frog's? Well, consider these facts. Rainy season out here, the water-holding frog gains 50% of its body weight in water. We humans have to carry canteens and plastic water bottles, but not this critter. Then, the water-holding frog burrows into the soggy earth to a depth of more than 3 feet. Come on, admit it. You'd need a shovel to do that, not just your hind legs. And here's where the frog really leaves Homo sapiens like us in the dust, or in this case, the mud. The frog is creating a kind of burial chamber for itself. It's preparing to go into a kind of coma as it waits for the next rainy season. After loading up on water, the frog sheds its skin in one piece. It's a frog skin bag, really, and the frog cocoons itself inside. This frog can stay in its underground den without food or water for 2 years or more. Could you do that? We humans can barely go 6 hours without a supersized fast food combo platter. 2 years? Forget it. When the rains finally fall again and the earth softens, the frog is able to rouse itself out of its self-induced coma. And what's on its mind? Well, the frog has to mate quickly so that its young will be able to mature, soak up their own water supply, and bury themselves until the next rains.
What's wild is there's some of these people that know this, they know where to dig, and they actually will squirt the water out of the frog and drink it. Bye. Have a good weekend.